Hi, Whiskey Jason here. Whiskey from the viewpoint of an American over here in Germany. Instead of visiting the distilleries, I decided to do a virtual tour through Ireland. Who is my guest today?
I'm Louise McGuane. I am the founder of Corry Irish Whiskey.
Yay, very good. Chapelgate Whiskey, Corry, and all that good stuff from Ireland. Very good. So we have a couple of people are actually watching us already. Chris was there way before we even started. He says, good evening. Very, very nice. All right, Louise, give me a little bit of your CV, please. What qualifies you to be a whiskey bonder?
So I spent like 20 years working for big multinational drinks companies before I quit my job to come and be a whiskey bonder. So I've sort of been around the drinks industry my entire career, and I've been around the people in the industry. I have a great love for it. You know, the lovely thing about the drinks industry, even outside of whiskey, is that people are at its heart. You know, no matter what you're drinking, whether it's a glass of champagne, a glass of wine, or a glass of whiskey, you know, it all started at some point in a field somewhere with a farmer behind it. And, you know, I guess what qualifies me really is that I love it. You know, I have a real heart for it. And that's it. If that qualifies me.
Yep, I'm sure it does. Let's greet a couple of people who've said hello already. Gokul says hello, Louise, and hello, Jason.
Hi.
So that's Thomas. Tina is also here. Good evening. David Earls, hello, Louise. Hello, Jason. Max, hello, Jason. Here is Glenn Whiskey here, and he says greetings from Berlin.
Great.
Witchmaster's there. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. And also, of course, your favorite person in Germany, Mareike. Yay.
Hey.
Very good. Whoops, lost you there. What happened?
I just had a phone call come in there. So
no problem. No problem.
I've killed that.
All right. Yeah, that's good. So very good that we have those people watching already. That's fabulous.
Now I've got your second because I'm losing your audio.
Oh, okay. Very good. So Timo is also there. Hi.
I might have to come back in.
Go for it.
I'll go out and I'll come right back in.
Very, very good. Yeah, that sometimes happens when you actually get a phone call. Then the microphone and the speaker switch over to that and doesn't switch back. So we'll have more Louise come back in a moment. Now, if no one knows about this in Germany, shame on you, because Mareike is the importer and distributor for Corry Whiskey. She has a lot of things. And Mareike is actually one of the persons that did the Bonders blend number 2 and number 3. And the infamous Bonder blend number 1 was never published. So we'll see what Louise is going to do with that in the future. Very, very nice. She'll be back in one moment, and we'll pick her back up where we just started from. Max, good to see you. I've never seen you before, at least not that I've noticed you before here from Berlin. So it's very, very nice that you were there. So David sounds like a British name or an Irish name. Great to see you as well. So Tina and also Thomas, the two of you are just very, very faithful viewers here of everything Irish. All right. So let's see, Louise. There you go. Hey, very good. Great. All right. And Kai is also there. It says, hello, Louise and Jason. Hope you are all okay. Yep.
All okay.
All right. So tell me a little bit about the genesis, the origin of Corry and Chapelgate Whiskey. What kind of compelled you to start to become Ireland's first rebonder in the 21st century?
So like I said, I spent 20 years working for big multinational companies in the drinks industry. And the thing about working in a big multinational organization is that after 20 years, you know, it's pretty wearing. You know, you're either in for life or you get out. And I always compare it to, you know, like Harry Potter, you know, that movie or the books. There's a scene where the Death Eater is like in an alleyway and he's like sucking the life out of this little kid in an alleyway, right?
Okay.
And that's what it kind of felt like for me towards the end of my corporate career. I just kind of had enough of it. I was living abroad. I was living in Singapore and my husband was living in London, and we never saw each other, and I was just traveling all the time. And it becomes a very political kind of thing when you're working in that environment. So I had enough of it. And I decided one day, you know what, I'm done. I went to the beach. I sat on it and for like 3 or 4 days, and I wrote a business plan for an Irish whiskey company. Because I could see that at that time, that's about 2013. At that time, I had seen what had happened in the United States in terms of craft distillation, and I could see that it was about to happen over in Europe, and particularly in Ireland as well. Obviously, I'm Irish. I have a farm, so it kind of made sense for me to quit my job, get out, and join the resurgence of Irish whiskey.
Excellent. So Sabina's joined us. Jason, whiskey-wise, great to see you, buddy. So the other Jason here.
You guys, your handles, I always get you mixed up, the two of you.
He's wise. I'm just Jason Whiskey. Or I'm just Whiskey Jason instead of that. And also, look who's here. How do I say her name correctly? Is it Neem?
Neve.
Neve. Yeah, the MH is more of the. Yes, very good. She's also here. Very, very nice. All right. So you named your company JJ Corry. Who was JJ Corry?
So JJ Corry was a whiskey bonder here in my parish in the 1890s. He was born here. He was one of 14 or 15 kids in the household. Back then, the eldest son would have always received the farm, like in accordance, like handing it down, and everybody else had to leave. So he wasn't the eldest son, so he left the household and initially started an auctioneer business, and then managed to make enough money from that to buy his own premises in Kilrush. And he ran like a little mercantile pub. Back then they would have, your pub was also your shop, so he sold everything from bicycle parts and tea and alcohol and, spices and everything, ammunition, musical instruments, like everything. And he also sold whiskey, and he marketed it under the name JJ Corry, special malt, and he sold it for like 2 pence a glass. We have receipts showing that he sold it on premise for 2 pence a glass, but he also shipped it around as well in bottles. So that's who he was. He was a really prolific, interesting entrepreneur. I've discovered his story because this antique dealer locally had actually been asked to dismantle his shop in 1983. JJ Corry died in 1932, but he gave his daughter Bridie inherited the shop, and from 1932 to 1983 she ran it exactly as it was and didn't change anything. So we have all of this like ephemera and paper information that kind of carried over from JJ's time. So we have a lot of information about what he did, which is a great resource for us.
Very, very good. One of the German independent bottlers. His name is Marco Bonn. Just joined Marco Bonn, and he joined us. Now, my question is a question that was also asked in the stream with Mareike. What's the difference between a bonder and an independent bottler?
Yeah, so I think, the key thing is for me, like Irish whiskey bonding, that specific terminology is traditional to Ireland. If you drive around the countryside right now, you'll see the term whiskey bonder written over the top of a lot of pubs because it's a hangover from when they were actually bonders. So what I'm trying to do is effectively redefine it for modern times, for what it means in modern times. So if you're an independent bottler, you are at liberty to source an IBC of liquid.
IBC means?
A big plastic container, food-safe plastic container. And normally they hold about 1,000 liters or 500 liters. So you can source one of those, and it's kind of raw liquid, and then you can just put it in a bottle, and that's it. You have independently bottled that whiskey. As a whiskey bonder, I want to go beyond that. Like I want to have an influence on the whiskey somewhere down along the line, right? So I don't distill, so that's not my bag. But
and you never will.
And I never will. After distillation, we have to have certain inflection points as to where we're influencing the whiskey. And what I do as a bonder, and what I consider to be modern whiskey bonding, is that in the case of new make whiskey in particular, I go and I source the new make, I taste it, And then we decide, okay, what cask is that new make going to go into? What's the flavor profile that it needs from the first day it comes off the still? We decide that, and then we go away and we source the casks. We deliver the casks to the distillery, or sometimes we have them filled up here. And we fill the new make into the cask. We then bring it down here for maturation here on site. We're right along the coast. And we have, very carefully controlled maturation circumstances, and we can monitor all the casks, et cetera, et cetera. And then eventually when that new make is ready, whenever that is, either it'll go into another cask, for some additional influence, or it'll get blended. So, we never buy a cask, a pre-blended whiskey and like bottle it and sell it. We're always going to be blending no matter what, whether it's new make or older stock. We kind of control everything from the point of distillation to the point of bottling, all the way along. And that kind of would differentiate us to some degree, certainly for independent bottlers. And it's just that kind of, attention to detail and being really kind of meticulous about our wood program and being really meticulous, about our blending, how we disgorge and how we blend and the timelines. We do everything a distillery does except distill, basically.
All right, very, very good. Now, we have the red spots, the yellow spot, the green spots from Mitchell and Sons. Is that something similar? Because they don't distill it themselves and they just do wood.
Well, it's owned by Pernod Ricard. It's distilled in Middleton.
Yeah.
They used to be a whiskey bonder back up until about 1962. They were the last whiskey bonder on the island, Mitchell and Son. And they would have done what we did. They had cellars downstairs, and they would have gone off and sourced their whiskey from a local distillery. They had their cellars downstairs, and they curated all of those casks very carefully and custom blended it for their customers and all that sort of stuff. But they're not Mitchell and Son are a fantastic wine and spirit merchant up in Dublin. But all of that, that's made down in Middleton. It's a Pernod Ricard product at the moment. So I wouldn't call it a bonded whiskey per se.
Very, very good. Because one of the things is you have different distilleries as well that you like to choose from. All right. Now, you don't have a cellar. What do you have then?
So I have a beautiful bonded warehouse. I have a kind of custom built bonded warehouse here on site. And we kind of modeled it. It's a bit of a Frankenstein, right? Because I built it based on a mixture kind of tradition in Irish whiskey and Scotch whiskey and American whiskey and French whiskey and everything. So it's quite small. It has a southern aspect. I built it so the long side of it kind of gets sunlight all day long. So it's kind of artificially heated or naturally heated, if you like. It has windows down the southern facing side as well, because it gets pretty cold here in the wintertime. It's less than 7 degrees centigrade here on this site 50% of the year, in accordance to the meteorological surveys that we had done. And that's no good for whiskey maturation. Below that temperature, your whiskey is just inert and it's sitting there and it's not moving. So I wanted to make sure that the rack house that we built stayed above that limit year round if possible. So because it has that southern aspect, it gets sunlight all day long. In the wintertime, it has windows on the side, which I kind of borrowed from Kentucky. They have them in their warehouses very often. And when the sun is quite low in the winter, which it is here along the south side, the sunlight goes directly in those windows, and you get a lot more kind of thermal energy on the interior of the rack house. It has a clay floor. That's just for humidity regulation. I kind of borrowed that from the old dunnage warehouses, and a lot of the sort of wineries in Spain still use that. That just means that if it gets too dry, you can just spray water on the floor and it'll self-regulate the humidity. And it's pretty small. It's the max capacity in there is about 600 casks total. Max. Everything is racked, stored on the bilge, on the side, just because we're about incremental benefit. And I believe that there's an incremental benefit in having that extra surface area contact with both heads from the moment the whiskey comes off the still. You know, you're just getting a little more flavor extraction, a little bit more over time. So we rack everything as well. So, you know, it's lovely. It's one of a kind. It's very pretty as well. I kind of stone clad it on the front, so it looks like an old hay barn that's been there for 100 years.
All right, very good. I actually, do you recognize this picture?
Yes, that's the rack house. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I stole it from your website, so I thought that'd be very interesting. All right, very good. Jason Whiskey Wise says we should both go to Ireland and visit JJ Corry and make a Jason expression. Ooh, who knows? Now,
now you were supposed to be here now. You were supposed to be staying here.
I know. I'm sorry. That was last week. I was supposed to be there, but unfortunately, COVID-19 kind of killed my plans for Ireland. So that's the way it is. All right. Now tell me a little bit about your expressions. You have the first one there. You have the Gale. So it has something to do with a bicycle, I think.
I have the Gale. Here it is. And yeah, this is named after a bicycle that JJ Corry invented. So he was actually the social secretary for the local cycling club. So we just named it after the bicycle that he invented. And this is kind of our flagship blend. You know, this is sort of what we do. This is how we showcase our blending chops. You know, all the whiskeys in here come from like the big three old guard distilleries, obviously, because they can't come from anywhere else because they're quite old. This is 60% malt, 40% grain. We tend to go harder on the malt on our blends just because of the complexity it lends. You know, we're aiming for qualitative blends, so we tend to go higher on the maturity of the stock that we put in here, and also on the percentage of the malt.
Is that a US bottle in your hand?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
I was going to say I have a 0.5 liter bottle, and you're holding a very big one, aren't you?
750. Yeah, 750.
Yeah. Excellent.
Germany is the only place that has 500.5s actually.
Oh.
At the moment, yeah, we might change that, but you guys are the only ones.
So there's a batch 1 and a batch 2 as well. Talk about batch 1 first of all, the whole process, because you had a lot of hurdles to jump, or a lot of loops to jump through, I'd have to say.
Yeah, so I talk about this a lot, particularly this week as well. So it was a nightmare. Like, the term nightmare doesn't begin to describe how difficult it was to launch the business. And the reason for that is that it was very early on in the cycle of the new cycle of Irish whiskey. And for a very long time, Irish whiskey there was only 3 or 4 people making it, you know.
You and John Teeling really pioneered a lot of things. You trailblazers are both of you, right?
I mean, listen, anybody who mentions me in the same sentence as John Teeling, all I can say is thank you. Like, he's the guy. He
is the godfather of Irish whiskey. Yeah.
He's the guy. Yeah, like, he's the guy. And I bought a lot of whiskey from John. Like, you know, he's been very helpful to me as well. And he's one of the best. He's one of the smartest people I've ever met, to be very honest with you. And he's his business brain is out of control. Like, he's definitely one of the most. He's amazing. Anyway, so back then, the industry was kind of unregulated. You know, it was regulated, but it wasn't very hard to regulate the industry because there was only a few people in it, really. And so there was only a few people in the country regulating it. So then suddenly all these small guys like me open up, and you have government bodies down here in County Clare who don't even know what whiskey is, like, suddenly have to regulate it. And that's a very dangerous combination, because you get somebody who literally has never had a glass of whiskey in their life. They probably had a glass of whiskey when they were 15. You know, one night they went out, they drank 10 glasses, they threw up, and they never drank it again. And now they're telling me what I need to be doing. It didn't go very well.
My wonderful. I love the story of you had to work with in America would be FDA, the Food and Drug Administration. I don't know what's called in Ireland, but she said you're not allowed to keep whiskey in wood. It has to be in stainless steel. Lady, think. I mean, it's just amazing the stories you've told me.
Yeah, and literally, like, can you imagine having to have that conversation with somebody and not being able to tell them you're in, for God's sake?
Yeah, really.
You have to have the conversation. Like, that person has power over your business, and you have to pull out the technical file or whatever and say, listen, according to the EU, you actually have to mature it in a wooden cask. I don't know what to tell you. I know it's a wood product.
Amazing, isn't
product,
it?
But yeah. And then the other one was the same kind of conversation. Like there are tasting notes on the back of this bottle, as there are with the majority of whiskeys on the planet. And the tasting notes, you know, they say like lime and peppercorn. And I had to prove to her that I didn't put lime and peppercorn into the whiskey. So there was a lot of those like weird, mind-numbing conversations, basically. And you know, it was a tough time to be honest with you. There were moments I thought I wasn't going to get through it, but we got through it, and we, you know.
Congratulations! Yes.
We did it, and so we launched the Gale, and the Gale was our first ever release, and it is a big, juicy fruit bomb of an Irish whiskey, and that's exactly what it's supposed to be.
Talk about distribution for a moment. Where can we get the Gale?
You can get it in Germany from Irish Whiskies. Marika is actually running a promotion at the moment that if you buy JJ Corry, you get one of our lovely hats as well. They're awesome hats. You can get it in the United States. It's in it's like 7 states over in the US. More by the end of the year. Obviously, Ireland, the UK, pretty much nationally in both of those. Belgium as well. Hong Kong, Singapore, and we, you know, hopefully a couple of additional kind of European markets this year. This year was a big push in terms of export for us, but that hasn't happened. We've just launched in Canada as well, so you know we're pretty international in that regard.
Very, very good. Now, after the Gale, you had a lot of tiny expressions or different bottlings. For example, I have something called a flintlock.
Yes, flintlock. Where is it? Here. I don't think here we go. Flintlock. This is a reject bottle because I forgot to put the bottom label on it. So the Flintlock is a single malt, and it was a 16-year-old single malt. This kind of put us on the map. It won Best Irish Single Malt in the Irish Whiskey Awards in 2018, I think.
Congratulations once again.
Yeah, like it was a big, you know, I don't do a lot of awards because a lot of them are they're just kind of a money-making racket, to be honest with you.
Pay €200 and get free stickers.
Yeah.
Or even more, yeah.
Like, we enter kind of 3 awards or 2 awards. We enter the Irish Whiskey Awards because it's free to enter. And also, I respect and admire them, like, because the judges are a mixture of whiskey fans and professionals. And it's a very wide judging base. And I really respect those awards. So when we started winning those awards, it was like a huge big deal because we're a nobody, you know, we're a nothing in the industry. And our first single malt that we released, you know, wins Best Irish Single Malt. It was amazing. I'd only made about 650 bottles of it though. It was just 3 casks that we, because even with a single malt, you have to blend it unless it's a single cask. We pulled 3 casks from the library, and we had tried a number of different combinations. And it was just a third of those casks. So there was only
all 16-year-old single malt, amazing stuff.
Yeah. So that was the kind of first single malt, and then we started to do these things called Bhandar's blends. And in Germany, it was the first one that we ever did. Actually, it was Bhandar's blend number 2. It was called. This is Marika's latest Bhandar's blend number 3. These are really good fun because the way that we do these is that if you're a customer, you know, like if you're the Whiskey Exchange or whoever you are, you know, Celtic Whiskey Shop or Marika, you can come to the farm with me and we'll go into the rack house and we'll have a flavor profile in mind, and we'll just spend about 2 days blending a test bottle, and then we scale it up, we vat it up, and then we bottle it. So we have done a lot of these. You know, we don't do them for everybody. We do them for kind of really whiskey specific customers, people like Masters of Malt and Milroy's in Soho and Marika in Germany. So it's kind of whiskey lover accounts that we do them for, and they're tiny bottlings of about 120 bottles at a time. So they're really, really small, but they're really good fun.
And every time I do a video about one of those, I get like about 12 different emails. Can you sell me a bottle? Can you sell me a bottle? And it's like, nope, I opened my bottles. I'm so sorry. Very, very good. Now, Jamie asked, any plans for Northern Ireland sales?
Yeah, like we have a distributor called Axiom Brands who we have like an agreement with them that they have to cover the UK. Like so, and Northern Ireland is technically, from a commercial standpoint, it's technically in the UK. So they actually cover the UK, the Northern Ireland, and we've started to kind of make inroads into Belfast a little bit. But yeah, we're up there, but not like I think. Again, this year was going to be a bigger push for us up there, but we just, everything that happened, we haven't gotten around to it.
Very good. Alicia also asked, what do you think about multiplying whiskey rewards, especially those ones with paid entry? Do they have any value, or is it just add-on for label?
They're just
you meant
trash.
the awards.
Like,
yeah.
They're all trash. You know, if you, like, I remember getting a notification from one of them, and I was like, all right, I'm going to enter. And it would have cost me something like 5,000 euros to enter some whiskeys into this thing, and I definitely would have gotten a medal out of it because everybody gets the medal. So forget it. Like, forget it. We do. Sometimes I forget to do them, but we always do Irish Whiskey Awards. We do World Whiskies Awards because I think they're okay, but they're expensive. Don't make no mistake, they're expensive. And but the judging panel for that is really good. And sometimes we do the San Francisco Spirits Awards as well. We didn't do it this year, but that's...
Well, this year they didn't do anything anyway. Also this year they did a virtual award ceremony and so on, and most of the judges didn't make it, and it was a mess. Let's just say that. All right, Sabina just opened her 5th bottle of Gale, number 1. Yay. Now, David also asks here, are there plans to release any more expressions with tequila? Or the mezcal cask finish? So we have to talk about the battalion now. And how hard are those casks to procure? I wasn't able to get my hand on the battalion. Hi, oh, by the way.
Yeah, so yes, the battalion is going to be part of our core portfolio moving forward. And we are removing the mezcal cask from us. And the only reason we're doing that is that it doesn't add anything, right? The mezcal cask that we had, there's a process called... So basically, when we did the battalion, if I tell you the story of it, it was an experiment. And
a quick experiment, by the way.
Yeah, it was a good experiment. I went to, in Irish whiskey, like you're allowed to use any casks you want, unlike Scotch. And I knew that somebody was going to do it at some point. And I love tequila and I love mezcal. I worked for a long time on Don Julio tequila at Diageo. I've been to Oaxaca and I've been to Jalisco. Like, I like, those are profiles that I like, and I love mezcal in particular. My original idea was I just wanted to get an Irish whiskey and put the mezcal smoke on it, you know, that mesquite kind of smoky flavor, because I love smoked whiskey in general. And so I was at a cooperage in Maine in the United States, and I was knocking around up there, and they had some tequila mezcal casks, and I said, listen, I'll take 2 of each. Let's put them on the container. There was a container coming over to Ireland, and I said I'll try an experiment.
Maine of all places. I thought it was Mexico.
No, but I'm coming to that. But now I'm getting my casks from Mexico, because this was just an experiment to see what would work or not. And I only had 4 casks, so I put some malt and grain into the casks, like, you know, two malt casks, 2 grain casks, just to see
what happens.
Yeah, we left it for like 9 months, 10 months, and then we disgorged it, and then we sort of blended it, and we ended up with the battalion. I've removed the malt from the equation because it's too much. It doesn't take the influence very well. And I've removed the mezcal from the situation because you can never get that mezcal smoke. It doesn't come out of the cask. So what I've done now is I now have a deal with a tequila distillery in Jalisco, and they are selling us tequila casks in much bigger quantities.
Container.
Yeah, exactly. Well, less than a container, but close. So we're going to start doing a lot of that with just grain now moving forward, because the 2nd battalion that went to America only had grain in it because the malt is just too much. So yeah, that's battalion.
All right, so batch number 2 will be coming to Germany, I hope, soon. America got it before Germany, which is very unique.
Yeah.
But we got batch number 1. I don't think they got it, so who knows? That's okay. Very, very good. Also, Hauke is there. Good to see you. So you have a lot of little tiny expressions as well. You have the banner, and you had something with a, what was it, goat's head, I think? What was it called?
Oh my God, that is a good whiskey. Honestly, it's one of my favorites. This is the Old Tom.
Old Tom, exactly. Thank you. I'm sorry.
So the Old Tom, the reason it had a goat on it, we had the Irish Open, you know, the golf tournament. It happened here last summer, and this was just 100 bottles that we produced to sell up there. And the reason there's a goat on it is that like there are goats up at that golf course that they use to mow the grass. That's why. And Old Tom is the name of the guy who designed the golf course. So this was amazing. Like we had people driving from all over the country to buy this. It was one of the first times I realized, oh my God, people like us. This is a phenomenal whiskey. It's really beautiful, and it's actually one of my favorites, but there's none of it left now. It's all gone.
All right, very good. So I have a bottle open as well. If anyone in Germany would like a little sample, please ask. We have it on my sample list. Now, you should have realized that your whiskey is a collector's item when the Bhandar blend number 2 or 3 went for 4 digits, right? Or 1,000 euros someone paid for that bottle, which is just mind-blowing, right?
Crazy. Yeah. Like, it happened last summer. It's a very strange thing, right? So as a whiskey maker, I just want you to drink my whiskey, right? I want you to buy it, of course, and I want you to sit at home. I want you to drink it with friends, and I want you to tell your friends about it, but I want you to consume it. I want you to drink it. So the collectible thing, I don't know how to feel about it. Like, I don't love it when people buy all the whiskey, but then never, with no intention of drinking it. Like,
they want to have the complete collection. Yeah,
you're supposed to drink my whiskey. Please drink my whiskey. So that kind of happened last summer. When we released the Bhandar blend, that's when I knew something was up, because that was the first one that went nuts. And people were like, you know, you could only buy it in County Clare. There was like lines outside of shops and everything to buy it. It was crazy. So that's kind of when I knew something was up. So I try not to pay attention to the collectible thing anymore, because there's nothing I can do about it. And it is what it is. We're just making good whiskey for you to enjoy, hopefully.
Now, I'm going to contradict you for a moment, because you made something called The Chosen. Do you really expect the people to open that one up and drink that?
Yes. Yeah. Like,
Tell me more.
You have the first one that we put out the door was delivered on a helicopter for somebody's birthday, and they opened it that night and they drank the whole thing with their friends. That's who's going to drink that whiskey. Like, you know, the majority of the people who bought The Chosen will drink it.
Not everyone knows about The Chosen. Now tell us a little bit the background here.
I have one in the back here. So
don't drop that bottle.
Yeah, it's a pretty nice one. So The Chosen was one of the first casks that we ever sourced, ever found. And we spent about 3 days like looking for casks the first time we went out looking. And after the third day, we sat down and we were agreeing, like, okay, what are we going to buy? Because it's expensive. And I had all my notes. And every single day at dinner, I kept going back to this one particular cask. And I was like, that is the standout for me. That's the standout for me. That's the standout. And it was still the standout in day 3. And this is in 2015, I think. And I said in 2015, I'm going to do something special with that cask. It's that good. It's that wonderful. So then it was this years and years and years of work. I found the best, most contemporary crystal maker up here on the island of Ireland, a company called J-Hill Standard, who make hand-blown, hand-cut, beautiful crystal.
Was it down in Waterford?
Very modern way. And then I found a cabinet maker called John Galvin, who he basically he works up in the shipyard in Glasgow, but he's from County Cork in Ireland. And he will go out and he will find a piece of wood from the old shipbuilding days that's about 500 years old, that was felled like 550 years ago. And he makes stuff out of that. Like, he's amazing. And he had done a lot of cabinetry work for people like Macallan and Mortlack and people like that. If you've seen a 50,000 pound bottle of whiskey in a box, John made the box. So I worked with those two suppliers, those two craftspeople, and we kind of really worked together on it. And I was like, I want this to kind of express County Clare and the beach that I walk on every day with the dogs. So the design was kind of all centered around that. And we just made 100 of them. They sold out before they went to the market. You know, we did a lot of pre-sales in Asia and all over the place.
What was the price per bottle again?
It was about 6,500 euros. Yeah. And, but that's nothing. Like, you know, if you think about it, nobody had done this in Irish whiskey. And my whole point was, They do this in Scotch all the time. They do this in American. They do this in Japanese all the time. It's very normal. Our liquid is just as good, if not better, than theirs. And we never celebrate it. We never put ourselves on a pedestal and go, look at this beautiful piece of art, this beautiful piece, luxurious item that this vessel that this wonderful whiskey is in. Nobody had done that in Irish whiskey, and it made me crazy. So I did it.
All right. Now, Middleton did the very rare now that goes for 35,000. How do you feel about that?
I feel great about that. That's exactly what should be happening. If Scotland are doing it, we should be doing it. You know.
The question: why didn't they do it 10 years ago, right?
Exactly. Like, you can buy my whiskey. The starting entry point is about 50 euros, right? So we have accessible whiskeys and we have inaccessible whiskeys, because there are two ends of the market, and you have to meet both.
Very, very good. Now, James said Louise worked with Gil and Jill on the design of the most recent J.J. Corry labeling. Has she any further plans to work with other Irish artists in the design of future labels? It's a great idea. Thanks.
Yeah, I think, yes. So I think our big thing now is going to become, outside of our whiskey, you know, like making really, really good whiskey, I think collaborations with Irish designers and artists is part of our DNA. It's part of what we do, but it's not collaboration for collaboration's sake. You know, championing and heroing Irish design, modern contemporary Irish design I love doing it. So we're definitely going to do a lot more of it. I mean, this was a great project to work on. Like, Jill and Jill are some of the most interesting designers on the island right now. Working with those kind of people, the kind of creative sparks that they give off pushes you into very different directions. So yes, a lot more of that is the answer to that question.
Very, very good. So let's talk about the word labeling for a moment. You also had a few difficulties with that. Would you mind mentioning a few of the different changes you've had to make?
Yeah, so there is a bullcrap law called 110/2008. It's part of like food labeling laws out of the EU, and basically it states that in a blended whiskey you are only allowed to list the youngest component in the blend, right? So you are not allowed, should you decide to, and you do not have the choice to tell people everything that's in your blend, because that is considered misleading. So it is misleading for me on my label to list all the blend components, you know, the years, the cask types, the numbers, etc. I'm not allowed to do that because that is considered misleading. Instead, I'm only allowed, I have to be very vague about what's in the bottle. It's a cockamamie law. It's cockamamie. It wouldn't be acceptable in any other form of food, because whiskey is considered food, remember. You couldn't do it in yogurt, you couldn't do it in jam, but in whiskey, you have to. So look, when I started the business, like I said, it was pretty unregulated, and I decided there was no Irish whiskey technical file, really. It hadn't gone through the system. So I decided to be very transparent on my label to see if they were going to enforce that or not in Ireland. And I wrote on the Gale the exact components of the blend. 25%, 5% 25-year-old, 27.5% 11-year-old, 27.5% 15-year-old, etc., etc., etc. And I pushed the label through the system, not that there was a system. I sent the label to the Food Safety Authority of Ireland, the Department of Agriculture, the Health Service Executive, the Department of Revenue in Limerick, the Department of Revenue in County Cork. 5 departments. And I said, this is my label. Are we good? And they said, well, you know, you can't write peppercorns, because there are peppercorns in your whiskey and all this sort of nonsense. But eventually they said, yeah, you're good. Off you go. And I released the label, the fully transparent label, because I was told I could. And I thought, this is great. They're not going to enforce that law. You know, this is a really good thing for Irish whiskey. It gives us a competitive advantage.
Transparency, finally. Yay.
Yeah, I was like, this is great. And everybody thought it was great. Everybody loved the label because it's really transparent. And then I got a letter from the Irish Whiskey Association saying there had been a member complaint and they were going to refer me to the Department of Agriculture. And I got a letter then saying they were going to take me to court and recall all of my bottles. So that sucked. So I fought that for a long time. I said to all the departments, you can't take me to court, you approve this. And they just said, well, no, it's your responsibility. So yeah, we can, even though we approved it, like we can take you to court, which is trash, basically. So I fought it for many, many years, to be honest with you. Like, it made me crazy. I joined the Irish Whiskey Association to see if I could change people's minds on the inside. I couldn't. There is no desire to change this in the industry by big companies. There's just no desire to change it because it would be a competitive advantage for small guys, to be honest with you. So it's not going to change. I'm not going to change it. So I just had to give up. I had to shelve it, and I have to make all my labels 100% compliant. And basically, I have to tell you guys, the consumers, less. I am not allowed to tell you what's in the whiskey that you have to pay whatever 60, 80 euros for. I'm not allowed to be honest with you.
Now, Bruichladdich, as well as John Glaser by Compass Box, just use a website. They just have a code on their bottle, and then you can type in that code, and they're allowed to list it. Is that different in Ireland?
Yeah, you can do that, but who the hell wants to do that? I want to put it on the bottle. Like, you know, we do it on the website, but like, even that, they're challenging that. The Scotch Whisky Association are challenging that. Like, I know John, like, I talked to John about this, you know, like, you know, I didn't go into it blindly. Like, I knew exactly what the situation was, but like, there's some of us in the industry that needed to change. Bruichladdich, myself, Compass Box, and a lot of others. It's just a cockamamie law. It needs to change, and the only people who are going to change it are consumers demanding it to change. No one's going to listen to me, you know.
All right, very good. Now, David asked again, maybe he missed it, but where do you get your spirit? You mentioned the three big boys, but where do you get your casks from? And someone also asked about, Hauke, will you have anything from Calvados?
Yeah, so I have a really good friend who makes a Calvados called Avalan, and we're kind of looking at working together on that. Really beautiful stuff. Yeah, Calvados is quite interesting, actually. It's and so is cider at the moment, actually.
Yeah, really, I noticed that. Wow.
Yeah,
I'm not sure about that one.
I don't know. We'll give it a go. We'll give it a go and see. In terms of where do we get our casks, so I go as close to source as I can, right? So I go to Kentucky to get my Kentucky casks. I buy a lot directly from Beam Suntory out of Kentucky, out of Alexa, and I buy virgin American oaks from Cooperage, Kentucky as well. And then the other stuff, like I was supposed to be going to Jerez, like to get sherry casks and to Portugal to get port casks, like around about a couple of weeks ago, because I was going in to direct to bodegas and stuff like that to source. So I don't tend to buy my casks from brokers usually. Like the battalion was an anomaly in that regard, you know, because it was an experiment. But now we're going to Mexico direct for all of those tequila casks. So the simple answer is I go as close as I can to the source for casks. So if it's a Calvados cask, I'll be going to a Calvados producer, for example.
Very good. Thomas asks about stout casks and rum casks, two of his favorite finishes.
Rum casks are on the, I have an order in for a bunch of Caribbean rum casks, because actually JJ Corry used to make rum.
Oh, yeah, so right.
Nice, yeah, from the Caribbean. So I have an order in for rum casks. Marika has asked me to do a stout cask. So we're going to do a stout cask. And we're going to
I think Thomas asked Marika to ask you to do it, but that's fine.
Yeah. So we actually, our local brewery, Western Herd, made a stout using, they matured a stout in one of our casks. So we're just going to take the cask back and then do a stout influence, probably over the summer, I think.
All right, very good. So what else can we look forward to in the future? What are your plans after all the craziness has ended here with this dumb virus?
My plans are to make sure that everybody has a job at the end of this. Like, I don't think you guys can, like, for a fledgling whiskey business and for a fledgling industry as well in Irish whiskey, this is not a good time. Like, this is a bad time. So the industry was just starting to go like this. And a lot of people in a small Irish whiskey business, like, you have to raise money every 2 years. Like, you have to do that. That's just, it's very capital intensive business. And if you're at the back end of a finance raise, like if you were just about to like raise a whole bunch of money to open your distillery, you're going to be in trouble. So what I'm trying to do right now is just work our way through this and have a lot of stock ready to go at the end. Like we do right now, like we have a grain whiskey called the Hansen that we're launching. We were supposed to launch 2 months ago or a month ago. We'll launch that at the back end of this. Like what I'm trying to do is build up as much stock as I can out here in the rack house. Bottle. And then when it lifts and when it's gone, just like run at 1,000,000 miles an hour to make up for lost time. That's the plan. Stay afloat. That's the plan.
Very good. So Niamh was one of your employees, or is one of your employees, and now you are, or you were all female, weren't you?
We were. We're mostly female. We have Eric as well on board now, who runs logistics and sales for us. So, but we're mostly female.
Excellent.
Not that it makes a difference. It shouldn't make a difference. We talk about it.
Yeah, you're right, but it does sometimes. It's nice to notice that. All right, yeah. Alicia also asked, do you have a visitor center? She lives in Galway. It's not far to Clare. Sorry for my pronunciation there.
I mean, sure. Like we hired somebody to manage that this year, and it's not happening now, obviously. But we do. We're supposed to be open for by appointment only tours now. We're not, obviously, but we will be when this is all over, or we might be next year. I don't know. But the short answer is yes. The long answer is not right now.
So they have to contact you. There's probably a possibility from the website to write an email, or you're very active on Instagram and Twitter and so on, and we can do that. So personal invitation, yes. A busload of people, I don't think so, right?
No, maximum of 10 people at a time. Maximum. Yeah.
All right, very, very good. So now I'm going to ask you also about your, I love the story about bottling. So you had the problem of getting someone to bottle your bottles, first of all, and then you actually also have a blending room. Could you talk about those two things?
Yeah, so when you start an Irish whiskey company, you don't really even think about bottling. You don't even consider it. You just think it'll just magically end up in a bottle and it'll be great. And with an industry like Irish whiskey, the problem was, or is, and still is that it wasn't set up for small guys. It's just set up for like Jameson banging out like 5 million bottles a day or whatever. So there are bottling facilities on the island, but they won't work with you because they don't want to spend an entire day clearing down a bottling line just for your run that will take 90 minutes.
If even that.
If that. So they're just bottling for Diageo and Pernod and Beam, and like that's what they do. So you can't get anything bottled. Like they just won't. It's not in their interest to do it for you, and I don't blame them. So we put the Gale 1 into tank up at John Teeling's. Actually, John was very kind. He lent me a tank for our first blend, and they had built it for me. Actually, it was amazing. And
I did not know that part. Okay, wow,
incredible. And there was no gauge on the outside of the tank. It was just a big 9,000 liter tank, right? And it was. I kind of rocked up and I was like, these guys will just blend all this for me. It'll be great. I rocked up and they were like, okay, what are we doing? So I had to run the whole blend, which was a great experience. And when you do a blend, you have everything really it's basically a recipe, But our blends are really difficult because they're like, okay, we need 10 liters of 1991 cask 8065. So you have to go and get that cask and get 10 liters out. Like it's not just like dumping casks, it's like really concentrated. So at one point during the blend, there's no gauge on the outside of the tank. So we were depth gauging it with this plumb line from like 1865. And I thought that we had added too much of like 2006 or something. And I thought the whole blend, that was it, like 8,000 liters was gone, And, but it wasn't, it was fine. And it was a terrible experience because it was just chaotic and I didn't have control over it. So right there and then I said, this is never happening again. I'm going to build a Bhandar's blending room so that I have total end-to-end control of everything. Small tanks, big tanks, gauges, weighing scales for measuring exact, amounts of liquid, like really tiny stuff that nobody else has because they don't need it. So I built that, and then the bottling thing, then all that whiskey was sitting in a tank from July to the end of September because I couldn't get anybody to bottle it for me. I eventually found somebody cancelled on one of the bottlers in Waterford, and And I went down there. I literally went onto the bottling room floor, and I stood in the middle of the bottling room floor all day until I saw the bottles coming off the line. Because I knew if I missed my window, I would never get it bottled. So, yeah, it was really touch and go. We had all these orders and I couldn't ship anything. And I know that was shared by a lot of my friends in the industry too, because we were all around that time, 2017, calling each other frantically about bottling, and nobody could get it done. So we have a bottling line here now on site, and we'll probably end up doing contract bottling for small guys because we have the facilities to do that, and it kind of makes sense, and it'll be something additional to add to the industry. But we don't have those problems anymore. Everything is end to end and really controlled, so it's great. Very
good. Now, David asks, how many bottles do you get per barrel? The angel share must be reasonably low in a colder area like Clare.
Yeah, it is. It's about 2% per annum. It goes up and down, like it depends. It really depends on the age of the cask, obviously, and there can be really incredibly wide differences between casks, depending on where they were in the warehouse, depending on the conditions they were matured in and that sort of stuff. So, like with the Chosen, I got 100 bottles. That was it, right? But I have. And that's a 1991 cask. But I have 1991 casks out here in the rack house that I'll get like 180 bottles out of. You know, it's just a different gauge, basically. But a normal cask is about 250 liters. There's a tolerance because every cask is handmade and they're all different, basically. So 250 liters, let's say, if it's any kind of age at all, it's going to come out of the cask in the 50s, you know, and around the 50-something%. So then you're going to be adding water to that again to bring it down to bottling strength. So you get a couple of hundred bottles out of each cask, but depending on the age and the ABV that you cut it at. So a 3-year-old, which would be coming out of the cask at about 60%, and if you're going to be cutting that down to 40%, you might get 400 bottles out of that. But if it's a 10 or 15-year-old, you'll get 200 to something like that, depending.
Right. Very good. Now, Kevin asks, and this is for you as a Bhandar, very interesting. Will there be single casks in the future?
Yeah, so the Chosen was a single cask, and there's 1 or 2 other kind of Chosen things that'll be single casks. They're not ready yet. So we have, we taste our casks, we reclassify them every 2 years now. Like we taste everything again every 2 years. And then you move them around into different positions as to where they're going. And we have 2 casks that are coming up on being single casks, and then we have a few others that we've earmarked, but that wouldn't make it for like 10 or 15 years, but we've pushed aside. So yeah, we'll do the single cask, but when we do the single cask thing, it'll be like the Chosen stuff again. You know, that's the level that we'll do it at. But then again, having said that, who knows? If I come across, like I'm buying, I'm out there sourcing whiskey all the time. And if I find a 10-year-old or a 15-year-old that's particularly great, and I feel like it'd make a good kind of single cask, we'll do it. But we have 1991s that are on their way to being single casks when they're about 32 years old.
Excellent. Can you mention some of the distilleries you're actually sourcing from, especially the newer distilleries that are not the 3 big boys?
I wish I could. Like, I was in the middle of signing a bunch of contracts when all of this went down, and it's kind of like I source from all the big, the bigger, look, Pernod won't sell me anything, kind of thing, but everybody else sort of will. Like, so I source from all the older, bigger guys when I can, in terms of older stock and newer stock and stuff like that. Obviously, I buy from GND because John's great,
Great Northern Distillery for all us. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and at some point I'll be able to be a lot more transparent about that, but it's a weird timing for me at the moment, essentially. This, again, it's one of those things, like, this was the year for us of, like, really widening the library in terms of breadth.
Well, I'm sure West Cork has sold some casks. I'm sure Royal Oak has now sold some stuff since they're not working with Walsh anymore. And so there's a lot of other guys out there that are actually producing some stuff that you might not be able to say, but I could kind of, maybe, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you come on site, I'll tell you, but, like, I have to be careful,
Exactly, no problem. So Kevin said he would buy a single cask and he'll sell his car so he can afford it. All right. Very, very good. Witchmaster asks, will there be any peated single cask strength whiskeys from Ireland from you or maybe even from anyone else?
Yes, so G&D right now is making this beautiful double peated whiskey. It's like really crazy phenolic whiskey.
I actually have it here.
Yeah, I love
the
it.
fairy cask from Marika is also the same stuff.
Yeah. So yeah, and they're making a lot of that. So you're going to see a lot more of it. I love peated whiskey. I absolutely, any smoke at all on anything, like I love it. But I don't have any, my stocks aren't old enough yet, but absolutely yes. I'm going to do the peatiest Irish whiskey ever made. Like I'm going to push the limits of it when I do it, because that's what I drink. You know, the peatier the better, but it's down the road for us, not yet.
So Ardbeg is a little bit too weak for you. You're only Octomore, huh?
Forget Octomore. Octomore is my speed. Like it really is, yeah.
All right, very, very good. David asked, and we're going to kind of slowly but surely land here. What was the one whiskey that you wanted to get involved in the whiskey business, Louise?
The one whiskey?
Yeah, what was the one whiskey that wanted you to get involved in the whiskey business? All right.
Yeah, so I used to work for Moet Hennessy at LVMH, and we went up to Glenmorangie. This is back in the day, like a very long time ago. We went up to Glenmorangie, and we went to the whole, you know, the house and the whole thing, and I remember drinking that and being like, this is great stuff. You know, this is definitely something I could get involved in. And then after that, it was actually Talisker.
Yeah.
I absolutely loved that flavor profile as well. But the first one ever really was Glenmorangie, like that whole, the ethos around that, the history around that, the flavor profile, the experience of being there, and there's nothing better like than going to a distillery and like sitting in it and drinking. I've spent a lot of time in American craft distilleries as well, and they were a massive influence on me too. But yeah, Glenmorangie was the first one.
All right, very good. I'm going to share your website here, and it's called GateWhiskey. Why isn't it called JJ Corry Whiskey?
It is jjcorry.com. It sends you there as well. Like the company name when we started out was Chapelgate, but the brand is always JJ Corry.
And what is Chapelgate for a
yeah, so there's a very famous song here in the village of Corry called the Chapel Gates of Corry, and I named the company kind of as a nod to that song. It's a local kind of just a local little tradition, really. But yeah, that's kind of it's like Diageo. Like the name of the company is Diageo, and the name of the brand is Johnny Walker. So it's like Chapelgate whiskey, but the brand is JJ Corry.
All right, very, very good. Now, at the end, the question I always like to ask is the question that I did not ask. What would you like to say that I have not yet touched on?
I'll tell you what I'd like to say. I'd like to say to everybody, stay at home and look after yourself, look after your young ones, your loved ones. I think now is a better time than any. If you've got bottles on your shelf that you've been saving for a special occasion, now is the time to open them and to drink them and to enjoy them and to savor them. You know, whiskey at the end of the day, it's water of life, and there's no better time to experience and celebrate life than now. So crack that bottle.
All right, I can totally agree with that. Especially waiting for a special occasion. Staying alive is a special occasion, I think, right? All right. Very good. Kevin says, I really enjoy listening to Louise tell her stories and plans. Top notch. And Tina says, I hope we see you again, hopefully at the Whiskey Fair in Dublin, right? Whiskey Live?
If it's on, yeah, I'll be there. Yeah, I'll be there. Definitely.
Exactly. If it's on, I'll be there as well. So we'll see if that works out or not. So very, very good. All right. So I put the links in here. David also says, great stream and thanks a mil, Louise. It's always a pleasure talking with you, I must admit. There's so much to learn from you and all your perseverance. I really, really respect that you've actually made it this far, and I'm really looking forward to see what's going to happen in the future here.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And, you know, I always appreciate you giving us your airtime and, you know, putting us out there. It means a lot for a small brand. So thank you.
You're welcome very much. All right, good. Whiskey. Jason here, whiskey from the viewpoint of an American in Germany, talking about Irish whiskey last week and this week. And it was my pleasure talking with Louise here from JJ Corry Whiskey. Last words are yours.
Cheers, everybody. Hold your loved ones tight and stay at home.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.